Pharmacokinetics, again, is the interaction of medicines or chemicals and human bodies or animal bodies or whatever. So let's start with a fairly simple problem. Which would you rather be exposed to 7 parts per billion of some bad chemical for 2 months in your air or water or food or something, or 2 parts per billion, which sounds better, for 8 months? Which of those sounds better? Well, you might say 2 months is a lot less than 8 months, but 7 is worse than 2 parts per billion. You could say this is a total of 7 times 2 or 14 parts per billion months of exposure. And here you could say, well, this is 2 times 8 or 16. So this is somewhat worse in terms of total exposure. And that's the kind of thinking we need to carry into the next example we're going to do. So we're going to say that we should account for both intensity of exposure, the amount, and the duration of exposure. So you could say concentration of the chemical So you could think of these examples this way. If I had a duration, exposure of 7 parts per billion for 2 months, 0, 1, 2, that's one thing. Or if I had a lower exposure of 2 parts per billion, but it went out to here, to 8 months, what did we do when we did 7 times 2 or 2 times 8? We did a multiplication, but you could also think of it as the area under the curve of exposure. So we're considering the area under the curve. Which pharmacokinetics people abbreviate AUC, not surprisingly, of the concentration versus time curve. So for medicine, you actually want that to be reasonably high, right? If you didn't want any exposure to the medicine, you wouldn't take the medicine. So for some things, a high area under curve is good, like medicines that you are hoping will make you better. For some things, a higher value of area under the curve is bad for toxins. Just keep that in mind, and next we'll go talk about this in a spreadsheet. Here's a spreadsheet with real pharmacokinetics data I got from this location. It's about the concentration in blood plasma for ranitidine. I guess that's how you pronounce that. It's a heartburn medicine. I think calculus and heartburn go well together, don't you? I just want to say here that they actually took measurements from more than one person. So here's person 2, here's person 6. As a statistician, I encourage doing multiple trials on multiple independent organisms, if you got their permission, of course. So let's concentrate on just person 2. I've got that copied into another sheet here, and we can zoom in. And we want to consider the area under the curve of concentration versus time. Let's do a quick graph of it. We usually expect to, like, once someone takes a pill and then we're testing how much medicine is in their bloodstream, we usually expect that to go up and then come back down with only one peak. And this is an interesting journal article because it finds a double peak. So I'm still not sure what's going on there, but it's interesting at least. So we want to take the area under this curve, not just the final answer, but see how it evolves through time. First thing to do is compute delta x or delta t. Let's do that over here. I know sometimes I've done that off to the right instead of to the left. One thing that's nice when working with a spreadsheet is if you're given data in a big block, try not to insert columns in the middle of that block, because then if you're given more data later, you might want to just be able to paste it in here and have all the calculations still work without having to paste in some things and then paste in other things by skipping a column. So it's okay to put calculations to the left of your big block of data and calculations to the right, but try not to split a block of data that you were given. All right, so here I'm computing delta t, again in hours. This last delta t doesn't actually mean anything because it's using a blank value, so we'll erase that. And then we'll say what's the AUC at time t, or you could say the cumulative area so far, right? And so we'll just start that with a 0. So that's not a formula. And then what's the next area under the curve so far?